All right, let's talk about something that sounds like it's straight out of a history book. A country trying to buy another country. We've all seen those headlines, right? It feels, well, impossible. So today we're going to dive into the modern rules of this very old game and figure out if something like that could actually happen.
So, can a country actually buy another country? This whole question really blew up a few years ago when former President Trump mentioned that the US might be interested in, well, buying Greenland from Denmark. And look, this wasn't just some off-the-cuff remark that disappeared. No, it sparked a huge international debate and got a lot of us thinking, wait a minute, is that even a thing anymore? Okay, so let's break down this surprising proposal. It was kind of framed as this big strategic real estate deal, but the rest of the world, yeah, they saw it very, very differently. I mean, it's the 21st century, right? The idea that you can just buy a territory complete with its own people and its own government, that just doesn't fly. This whole thing basically became a major test case for international law, and believe me, everyone was watching. And the reaction? Oh, it was swift, and it was loud. You had protests erupting in Greenland. Denmark came out with a hard no. And you could feel this wave of concern just ripple across Europe. But what's really interesting is that the response wasn't just no. It was more like, are you serious? How could you even ask that? And that reaction, it really showed a massive gap in understanding about how sovereignty works today. So you might be wondering, where does an idea like this even come from? Well, to get that, we actually have to go back in time. We need to rewind the clock because, believe it or not, there was an era when countries absolutely did go shopping for new land. And I mean, look no further than the United States itself. The country's history is full of these kinds of deals. Think about the Louisiana Purchase back in 1803. That one deal with France literally doubled the size of the U.S. overnight. And then in 1867, you have the Alaska Purchase from Russia. These weren't just small transactions. They were absolutely massive landmark deals that really defined an entire era of expansion. And here's the key thing to understand about that time. Back then, territory was basically treated like property, just an asset. A king or a government could sell it off, they could trade it, whatever they wanted. And the people who actually lived on that land, what did they think? Well, their opinion just wasn't part of the deal. It wasn't even in the legal equation. That was the old way of doing things.
Right. But here's the thing. That old world, it's gone. Completely. After the incredible turmoil of the world wars, there was this huge fundamental shift in thinking. A whole new set of rules was created, and it was all built around one incredibly powerful idea. And you can see that change perfectly right here. We moved from that old model where territory was just an asset on a balance sheet to the modern principle that changes everything, the right of people to self-determination. And I can't stress this enough. This wasn't some minor tweak to the rules. This was a complete revolution in international law.
So, what exactly is self-determination? Well, in a nutshell, it's the core idea, and it's actually written into the United Nations Charter, that people get to decide their own destiny. They have the right to choose their own government, to choose their political status, and to do it all freely, without some other country breathing down their neck. And that one principle, it changes the whole game. Okay, so now that we have this new, modern rulebook, let's circle all the way back to the beginning. Let's talk about Greenland, again. How does this powerful idea of self-determination actually hold up when it's faced with, say, a multi-billion-dollar offer?
All right, first things first, let's get one thing straight. Can you buy an entire country? The answer, according to modern international law, is a flat, unequivocal no. A sovereign nation like Denmark or Canada, it's just not for sale. But what about a territory that's part of a country, like Greenland? Well, that's where things get a little more complicated.
So, in theory, it is possible for a territory to change hands, but, and this is a huge but, it has to meet 3 incredibly strict conditions. Condition number 1, the state currently in charge, so Denmark in this case, has to agree, freely, no pressure. Condition number 2, and this is the big one, the absolute deal breaker, the people who actually live there have to say yes, usually through some kind of referendum or vote. And finally, number 3, the whole process has to be totally above board and follow all the rules of international law. So when you take those 3 rules and apply them to the Greenland situation, the answer becomes crystal clear, doesn't it? Greenland isn't just some empty piece of ice on a map. It's an autonomous territory, it has its own government, and most importantly, its people have that recognized right to self-determination. So could Denmark sell it? Not without the explicit consent of the Greenlandic people, and they made it abundantly clear that they were not, and are not, for sale. Okay, so why should we care about all this? What's the big takeaway?
Well, this whole episode was way more than just a weird diplomatic headline. It was really a clash of two completely different worldviews, and it tells us something really important about how the world works today.
You see, for a lot of countries around the world, the very idea of making an offer was deeply troubling. It felt like it was just ignoring all these fundamental rules that the world agreed on after World War II. Rules that were put in place for a very specific reason, to stop powerful countries from just taking or buying up territory whenever they felt like it.
And what's really going on here is that a proposal like this, it taps into some very old and very deep historical anxieties. We're talking about fears of a return to imperialism, a world of spheres of influence, where coercion is more important than consent, and where raw power just steamrolls international law. It brings back some pretty dark memories.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. The main lesson from this whole debate is this: legitimacy in the modern world doesn't just come from having the biggest military or the most money. Real, lasting legitimacy, that comes from consent. It comes from playing by the rules, and it comes from having genuine respect for the rights and sovereignty of other nations.
So to answer that big question we started with, can a country be bought? Well, the answer isn't about a price tag. It's about a principle. In the 21st century, sure, you can negotiate land deals, you can settle border disputes, but sovereignty, that ultimate authority, that belongs to the people. And people are not for sale.